"You rejected a certified payment in front of witnesses," the judge said loudly. The banker stood up fast. "Your Honor, no." The judge slammed his hand onto the bench. "You laughed at the man in that bank, in front of everybody, and still thought you were taking his farm." Nobody moved after that. Half the courtroom was staring at the banker now. 8 days earlier, First National Bank was packed when Harold Jones walked in, carrying a certified $9 money order. $9. That's all he brought to stop a foreclosure scheduled for Friday morning. The branch manager looked at the amount, then laughed out loud. $9. This saves your farm." People started turning around. One customer whispered, "He's finished." Somebody near the loan office even pulled out a phone. Then the manager slammed a rejection stamp onto the paper. Rejected. Payment not accepted, and flicked it back across the counter like it was worthless. People laughed harder after that. Harold didn't blink, didn't argue, didn't even look embarrassed. Because 13 days earlier, a foreclosure notice had shown up at his farmhouse. By Friday morning, the bank would own everything. The house, the farm, even the small grave behind the barn where his mother was buried. And somehow, Harold Jones still looked calm. He folded the money order once, slid it into his jacket pocket, and looked the manager dead in the eyes. "You should have cashed it." A couple people were still laughing when Harold turned and walked out of the bank. An hour later, Harold walked into the county records office and asked for one document the bank hadn't looked at in decades. 20 minutes later, he walked back out carrying a certified copy. And from there, Harold drove straight to a small-town lawyer's office, carrying proof the bank may have destroyed its foreclosure case the moment it rejected that payment. Ruth Hargrove picked up the rejected money order, read the stamp, and set it down carefully. "You let them reject this publicly?" "Yes, ma'am." "In a packed lobby?" Harold nodded. "You have witnesses?" 12. Maybe more." "And the payment was certified?" "Yes, ma'am." Ruth picked the money order back up, read the stamp again. Then she reached for an old federal statute book and started flipping pages fast. Suddenly she stopped. Her finger pressed against one paragraph. Ruth's eyes narrowed. That amount was deliberate. Harold stayed silent. Ruth looked back down at the rejection stamp. "You didn't go into that bank to make a payment." She tapped the paper once. "You went in there to make them refuse one." For the first time since Harold walked in, Ruth looked unsettled. "If this filing says what I think it says," she said slowly, "the bank just made a catastrophic mistake." By Thursday afternoon, First National Bank was already preparing auction paperwork. A printed notice hung in the lobby window. Friday, 9 a.m., 340 acres. Inside his office, the branch manager was already talking numbers with a buyer from Tulsa. "Clean transfer," he said confidently. "Should be wrapped up before lunch." Down the hall, somebody laughed about Harold's $9 money order again. One loan officer even joked that the old farmer should have brought 10. 20 miles away, Ruth Hargrove was staring at the original mortgage filing spread across her desk beside the rejected money order. Halfway through the filing, Ruth stopped turning pages entirely, grabbed the phone, and called district court. "I need an emergency hearing before Friday morning." A pause. Then the clerk asked, "What's the basis?" Ruth looked down at the rejection stamp. "Wrongful foreclosure." The bank's attorney opened Ruth Hargrove's emergency filing at 6:47 Thursday evening. She read the first page, standing up. By the second page, she was sitting down. By the third, She already had her phone in her hand. She called the bank's VP at home. "We have a problem." 20 minutes later, the branch manager's phone rang. "The money order," the VP said. "Tell me exactly what happened." The manager laughed. "The old guy brought in $9. I stamped it and sent him on his way." A pause. Then the VP asked, "Did you reject it in front of customers?" The lobby was full. "Yeah." Another pause. "Did anyone record it?" The manager stopped talking. At 9 p.m., 3 bank employees were pulling a loan file from the records room that hadn't been touched in decades. The attorney was on speakerphone. "Read me the escrow shortfall amount from the original default notice." Pages flipped. Then somebody said, $9. The room went quiet. "And the money order your manager rejected, was it for $9 exactly?" "Yes." "Certified?" "Yes." Nobody spoke after that. Then the attorney said quietly, "He didn't walk into that bank to make a payment." Silence. "He walked in there to create a documented rejection of the exact amount you claimed he owed." The branch manager finally spoke from his kitchen. "Can't we just postpone the auction?" The attorney didn't hesitate. "The emergency motion is already filed. A judge will see this before 9 tomorrow morning." Then the VP asked the question nobody in that bank wanted answered. "So, how bad is this?" The attorney took a breath. "That depends on what's buried in the 1973 filing." At 10 o'clock Thursday night, the lights were still on inside First National Bank. The auction was less than 11 hours away. And for the first time since Harold Jones walked out of that lobby, nobody inside the bank was laughing anymore. At 6 a.m. Friday morning, 3 hours before the auction, the bank's attorney made a decision. "Find the woman with the phone. The one recording in the lobby when you rejected the money order." Employees started scrambling for a name. A teller remembered only one thing. Blue truck. That was it. "Forget her," the attorney snapped. "Call Harold Jones. Offer to accept the payment." The manager called at 6:20. Harold answered on the 4th ring. "Mr. Jones, we're prepared to accept the payment and pause foreclosure proceedings." A pause. Then Harold said quietly, "You already rejected it." The manager tried again. "We're willing to correct the misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," Harold said. "You stamped it rejected in front of the whole lobby." Another pause. Then Harold said one word, "No," and hung up. 10 minutes later, the bank's records department pulled the rejection entry, time-stamped, logged, employee ID attached. The attorney asked, "Can it be reversed?" The clerk hesitated. "I can modify it, but the original archive will still exist." The attorney went quiet, because changing records now wasn't damage control. It was evidence tampering. At 7:50 Friday morning, Ruth Hargrove arrived at the courthouse carrying the emergency motion, the rejected money order, and the original mortgage filing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A woman's voice said, "Ma'am, I was in the bank that day. I recorded part of what happened." Ruth stopped walking. "You recorded it?" The manager laughing, holding up the money order, stamping it. "Can you be here before 9? I'm already outside." At 8:30, the bank's attorney arrived at the courthouse and saw Ruth standing beside a woman holding a phone. She immediately called the VP. "There's a witness here with video." A long silence. Then the VP asked quietly, "How bad is it?" The attorney watched Ruth and the woman walk into the courthouse together. "If that video gets played in court this morning," she said, "we're dead." The judge walked in at 8:51 Friday morning. The auction was 9 minutes away. Harold sat at the plaintiff's table in the same jacket he wore to the bank, hands folded, face blank. Across the aisle, the bank had 3 attorneys. The branch manager sat behind them with his leg bouncing under the table. The judge read Ruth Hargrove's emergency motion silently for a moment, then looked up. "You're claiming wrongful foreclosure based on the rejection of a certified payment." "Yes, Your Honor," Ruth said. "My client presented certified funds for the exact escrow shortfall the bank used to trigger default. The bank rejected it publicly and proceeded with foreclosure anyway." The bank's attorney stood immediately. "Your Honor, a $9 payment on a $100,000 mortgage is not a legitimate cure attempt. It was a stunt." The judge looked at her. "Was it certified funds?" "Yes, but for the exact amount your bank claimed was owed?" A pause. "Yes." "Continue." Ruth opened her file. "I have the rejected money order, the original 1973 mortgage filing, and video recorded inside the bank during the rejection." "Objection," the bank's attorney snapped. "We haven't reviewed any video." "This is an emergency hearing," the judge said. "Play it." Ruth pressed play. A crowded bank lobby. Then the branch manager's voice. $9? This saves your farm?" Laughter. The sound of the rejection stamp hitting the counter. Then silence, because Harold Jones never said a word. The judge looked toward the branch manager. "Is that you in the video?" The attorney tried to interrupt. The judge cut her off. "I'm asking him." The manager stood slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you rejected certified payment for the exact amount your bank used to initiate foreclosure?" "I didn't think it was." "In front of witnesses?" The manager stopped talking. The judge turned back to Ruth. "The 1973 filing, what does it say?" Ruth placed the certified copy on the bench. "Clause 14 states the borrower has the right to cure any escrow shortfall with certified funds before acceleration. If valid tender is refused, the default cannot be escalated." The bank's attorney grabbed the table. "That clause has been superseded." "By what?" the judge asked. "Show me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Nothing. The judge picked up the rejected money order, looked at the stamp, then at the frozen video frame on Ruth's phone. "You rejected certified payment, in front of witnesses, on camera, for the exact amount required to cure default." Then he closed the file. "Foreclosure is frozen, auction cancelled." A pause. "And this matter is being referred to the State Banking Commission." "We're done here." The bank's attorneys packed their files without speaking. The branch manager walked out of the courtroom with his head down. Outside, buyers who'd driven in for the auction were already leaving the parking lot. A clerk taped a notice to the courthouse door. "Auction canceled." Ruth Hargrove shook Harold's hand on the courthouse steps. That was it. No celebration. No speech. Harold walked to his truck alone in the same boots, the same jacket, and the same green cap he wore into the bank 8 days earlier. Then he stopped, because the branch manager was walking past him toward the parking lot. Eyes down, trying not to be noticed. Harold looked at him for a second. The manager slowed down, but didn't turn around. Then Harold said quietly, "You should have cashed it." The manager never answered. He just kept walking. 40 minutes later, Harold Jones was driving home down an empty Oklahoma highway. 340 acres waiting at the end of it. Still his. If you want more real courtroom stories like this one, subscribe.